All right. How things are going now. You guys tell me if everything looks okay, if you can see me all right, hear me okay. You guys let me know if there's any issues there. While we're waiting to get going here, let me just get the disclaimers out of the way we normally do. This is a weekly live broadcast. Normally, I'm doing these at 7 o'clock Central Time on Thursday evenings, but some things have changed at work. I'm working until 7 o'clock right now. So until the foreseeable future, we're going to be doing these at 8 o'clock Central Thursday evenings. We may change that up. I don't know yet, but right now it's 8 o'clock Central Thursday evenings. And what else? We can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. I don't have a topic planned out. I do this to just interact with you guys, get your questions answered. Whatever you want to talk about is fine with me. The only things I ask is be polite, keep it family friendly, don't start cussing anybody. We can have a disagreement. I love a good debate. I don't mind disagreeing with somebody. We can always be friends and disagree on things. That's perfectly all right. That's no reason to be angry with anybody because they have a different opinion than you. And just be polite about it. That's all I ask. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's get in here and say hi to everybody. We got Verna here from Bay's Place. She said, "Good evening, Chris. I hope others saw your community post." Yeah, I hope so. I know it was kind of last minute, but things have been kind of crazy at work lately. I didn't know for sure what was going on until, recently. So got it out a little bit late. But anyway, hopefully others saw it. We got everybody here. Dawn says, "Good evening from Central Illinois." Good to see you, Dawn. And let's see, Verna went to go get a cup of coffee. Joy from Western Oregon's here. Good to see you, Joy. Thanks for joining us. And who else we got here? Jesse Mills. Hey, Jesse, good to see you. Glad you were able to make it tonight. Where are we at here? Verna says, "Hey, Chris, only 107 days till QuailCon." Yeah, no kidding. It's coming up pretty quick, huh? Curtis Snow, "I'm doing well. Hopefully you're doing well too." He says, "How are you tonight?" "I'm doing all right. Got birds hatching right now. I had 26 that hatched out starting yesterday. Got them in the brooder this morning. It looks like I got at least another 4 or 5 in the incubator that have hatched since I left for work this morning. So all looks good. Bianca says, "Good evening, Chris and all. Good morning from Perth, Australia." Up early there, huh? Well, I don't know how early it is there, honestly. I don't know what time it is in Australia. But thank you for joining us either way. Tamara says, "Just getting back into breeding rabbits and doing quail." Well, awesome. Hopefully everything's going well there. It's, take breaks whenever you need to and getting back into it. Good luck. I hope things are going well. Hey, Caesar says, "Hey, Chris, how are you? I have 14 female, 4 males. Is that a good ratio?" We're talking about quail, right? So, yeah, that's not a bad ratio at all. I usually like to go about 1 for every 5 to 6 hens. 1 rooster for every 5 to 6 hens. So with 14 at 5 hens, that'd be only 3 roosters maybe that I would keep in there. But 4 is not bad. You can do it 4. That's fine. Monty Carter says, "Did I have to order your quail rails for, did I have to order your quail rails for your little giant, or did they come with it?" No, I had to order quail rails when I got my, when I bought the incubator and the egg turner. It came with chicken rails on it, so I had to order quail rails separately. It didn't come with the quail rails. Now, I don't know if they do anymore, if they offer them with quail rails already installed. I don't know, because it's been a long time ago since I've shopped for an incubator. But it's, sorry, got distracted by another post. But yeah, whenever I got it, I had to order those separately. Bianca says, "It's 9 a.m. now. So not that early." No, it's not too bad, 9 a.m. Well, thanks for joining us either way. At 9 a.m., I don't know. I'd be busy and I would have a hard time joining the live broadcast, but thank you for joining. Hey, there's Brandon for Whiskey Tango Farm. Says, "Good evening, Chris and everyone. How are you doing this fine evening?" "I'm doing all right. Hopefully you are too." Caesar said, "Yes, thanks." Well, you're absolutely welcome. And then Practical Junk from Tennessee says, "Good timing on the live chat. I just stopped working on my brooder." Well, awesome. I'm glad it worked out well. I did it just for that reason. No, I didn't do it for just a reason, but I'm glad it worked out well. We got 20 Warchild. I guess it's probably just Warchild. Says, "Shout out from New Zealand." Wow, all the way from New Zealand. Well, thank you for joining us from there. We got somebody from Australia too, which I know is not the same place, but they're kind of close to each other, closer than you are to me, I guess. Brandon says, "GQF egg turner comes with quail rails." Yeah, and with the Little Giant, you have to, and Verna says, with the Little Giant, you have to order the quail rails. Yeah, it was that way when I bought it anyway. I wasn't sure if they changed anything. But Caesar says they just started laying. I'm getting 6 eggs per day. Well, awesome. Congratulations on that. You're going to get a whole lot more, I'm sure. Where are we at here? Porcupine Acres says, I had 2 quail that came up lame. Waited for days to see if they would get better, but they did not. Went to put them down, but each one passed away in my hand before performing the act. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not sure what could have caused the issue. 2 quail came up. I mean, who knows? Could be any number of things. Hopefully, it's not like a bacterial infection, an illness or something that's being passed around that's going to affect the rest of the birds. Probably unlikely that it is. I've had that happen every once in a while. You get birds that just, for whatever reason, just die, and you just never know. So hopefully, it's just limited to just those 2. And you don't have that issue anymore. It's never fun to have to call sick animals. It's not fun to watch them suffer. It's always a struggle when you have to deal with those kinds of things. So I'm sorry to hear that. We got Bob here, says, first incubation of 14, got 6 chicks. My fault, didn't monitor humidity, and it got too low. It could be. I don't know how low it got. I mean, it could be related to that, especially if it was during lockdown. But if you're talking about prior to lockdown, it's unlikely that the humidity issue was really it. It's probably more than likely a temperature issue. Most of the time, if you have a failed hatch, it can be more related to temperature than humidity. So, I always say get a couple of thermometers that can be calibrated, calibrate them, make sure they're accurate. I say get 2 because it gives you peace of mind. You throw one in the incubator and it doesn't read the same as the incubator's reading. You don't know which one to trust. But if you get 2 and you get any 2 of those things reading the same, then you kind of have a pretty good idea that that's going to be accurate. You may have to adjust the temperature on your incubator just a little bit. I've had to do that on mine several times. But it could be a humidity issue too. So. But I would do that double check on the thermometer anyway, or the thermostat, and make sure it's reading correctly before you just go automatically blame it on humidity and then have another poor hatch. But 6 out of 14, I mean, that's not terrible. You still have some birds to hatch, so could be worse. Porcupine Acres says the other 24 are fine. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that it's not affecting your other birds. Monty says, just trying to get in raising quail. Been watching your videos. Have been very helpful. Enjoy your videos. Well, thank you so much for the kind comments. I appreciate that. I'm glad, hopefully you're getting the information that you need, and I'm glad to hear that things are working out. Let's see. Verna says, I usually buy a pair of govies to put in my incubator. Yeah, I've got a pair of govies as well, and they are pretty good. I like them. And Bob says, I have 2. One's a govie. Temp was only 99 or higher. Humidity is in the low 30s. Yeah, if it was in the low 30s all the way through lockdown, then that definitely could affect it. Humidity before lockdown, not that important. Low 30s is low for sure, but it's not as bad. Yeah, that's what Verna's saying the same too. 30 isn't bad unless it was during lockdown. That's basically, she put a little bit more precise than I did. But during lockdown, you will need a little bit extra humidity. So if you let it go down low 30s all the way through lockdown, then yeah, that definitely could be part of the issue that you had. It sounds like you're already monitoring the temperature and making sure it's accurate. So hopefully you got it figured out, and better luck on your next hatch. Porcupine Acres says, is there anything that can help if I find more with the same issue? Well, I don't know what the issue is, so it's hard for me to say. All you told me is it came up lame. I don't know. I mean, what does that mean exactly? Give me some details on it. Maybe we can help. But honestly, if it's just 2 birds that just die, I mean, who knows? There could be so many different reasons. But if you give us some more information, we might be able to figure out kind of what it is. What symptoms did they display? Did they have any injuries? Were they male? Were they female? Were they eating fine? Or how quickly did this progress? All those kinds of things. We'll see what we can do to try to troubleshoot that for you. But I'm not going to give you a whole lot of hope that I can, because like I said, there's just so many different things that can happen, and it could just be genetics. It could, who knows? There could be so many different things, but we'll try. Bob says, yep, Verna during lockdown added water, but too late. Yeah, you need to make sure you get that. Porcupine Acre is dragging one leg like it was broke. Well, give me a second to get this other comment answered. We'll get to that. Bianca says, So you've had a really bad death rate in our baby quails. Does anyone have any idea why this would be occurring? The more I hatch, the more it seemed to be losing. So what's the temperature in your brooder? That's the first thing. Most of the time, if you're going to lose baby quail in the brooder box itself, then it's due to a temperature issue. They're either getting way too hot or not hot enough. You need to keep it right around 100 degrees. It can go a little bit over, but right around 100 degrees until, well, for about the first week. And then you can start dropping it down. Once they start feathering out, they can start handling cooler temperatures for sure. But that chances are that's probably it. Yeah, Verna's got some good suggestions too. Says, do you have a gripper pad on the bottom of the incubator? Was there a problem with hatching or after hatching? Yeah, a little bit more information on that. Yeah, when did you lose them? That would help out a little bit with trying to troubleshoot that. That's my initial thought is temperature related, but it could be other things too. If they were late hatches, that's another thing that could be affecting them. So if your temperature is running a little bit low in your incubator and they're hatching out a little bit late, they tend to be much weaker whenever they hatch out late. So a lot of the times you will lose some of those later hatches. And if your temperature is running just a little bit low, it could be a majority of your birds are those later hatches. Do they have any leg problems? Are they displaying any splay leg? Any of those kinds of things. Porcupine Acres says, okay, dragging one leg, it was broke. So, that could be signs of something like bumblefoot or something like that. Usually when you see bumblefoot, they're not dragging their leg. They just kind of hop on one leg or they kind of limp on that one because it's the pad of their foot that's being affected. But that can lead to infections, and infections can definitely kill your animals. So it could be something like that. It may be that you have a really rough surface in your cage somewhere where they're having some leg problems on that, and that could kill them for sure. If you're not using coated wire, that might help with reducing any kind of those issues. I don't use coated wire right now. I'll probably replace it at some point, but right now I'm not using it. I don't really have many issues with leg problems. Every great once in a while, I'll have a bird that kind of hobbles around a little bit and then gets over it or something. But coated wire can definitely help relieve that for a couple of reasons. One is it alleviates rough surfaces, which is where bumblefoot kind of starts from. They get a cut, they'll get something in it, a grain of sand, something like that, and it gets infected. And then that's bumblefoot. If you don't treat that, then it can definitely lead to an infection that would kill the bird. It can turn into a staph infection, basically, is what it turns into. The other reason that the coated wire can help a little bit too is that it's a bigger diameter, bigger gauge. It's wider wire, so it makes it a little bit easier for them to walk on. So those are things that might help with that. Those are the only things I can think of right offhand. They could be getting their feet caught somewhere and really breaking their legs. I mean, honestly, that could happen if they're getting their feet tangled up in the wire on your cage floor or something like that. I find that a little bit unlikely. It may be happening, but I don't know how likely that is to actually happen. As far as other things that might cause that, I don't have any good suggestions right off the top of my head as to why you would see that. It could be a predator getting at them too. I did have a fox at one point that was coming up and he was grabbing the quail underneath the cage and grabbing their feet basically and pulling their feet off through the bottom of their legs off through the bottom of the wire or through the wire on the bottom of the cage. And so something like that could be getting up to them and causing problems. If there's something getting there harassing them, causing them to flush a lot, they could be injuring themselves that way too. So there's a couple of different suggestions. I don't know which one's going to apply necessarily. It's hard to say. Dawn says, are you feeding them cold water? Well, that's a thought too. And Dawn says just normal. Bianca says, Dawn, just normal tap water. So, I mean, that could be, I don't necessarily give mine warm water. But it warms up pretty quick in the brooder, but it's like temperature probably. And it is just normal tap water. So I doubt that that's the case, but you're onto something there too, though, Dawn. If it is cold water, especially if they can get access to the water, if it's a fairly wide water, like that, and they can get like stand in it, then that could definitely be an issue because what'll happen is they'll get in there, they'll get wet, and then they basically get hypothermic and then they die. So that could be an issue. You would probably know that was the case though, because they would be wet. They would look wet whenever you found them, more than likely, unless they laid there for hours and hours and hours before you found them. But that could be the issue. And if you've got a fairly wide, My water is in the brooder box, so I can't pull it out. But I've got one that's got a very narrow trough. It screws onto a mason jar. It's got a very narrow trough on it, so they can't actually get in the water, and that works pretty well. But if you've got, I thought I might have one in here. I don't. But if you've got one that's got a much wider trough on it, then you may need to put some rocks or something like that in there to keep them from actually getting in the water and getting wet. That could be part of it. Curtis Snow says, do you have a good pair of scissors that you would recommend for quail? I've already went through 2 pairs of kitchen scissors. I don't necessarily have a brand name. I have a fairly sturdy pair, but they were fairly cheap. I don't know what brand they were. I don't know, honestly, a good pair. I mean, Fiskars always makes pretty good stuff, so I kind of would, lean towards maybe that would be a good brand to look into. But I don't have like I said, I don't use a pair of Fiskars scissors. I don't even know what brand the pair I have is. It's probably just the Walmart, Basics brand or something like that, kitchen shears, and they seem to have worked pretty well. So I don't know. Ben says, hi from Black Bear Family Farms. I don't know. Just tried to hatch out celadons. No success. Maybe unfertile. Maybe humidity. Don't know. Could be any of those number of things could be happening. But if you haven't already, the first line of defense, when you have bad hatch rate or nothing hatches or whatever, the first thing to check is your incubator temperature, and that's what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. If you heard that conversation, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to go through it again. But if you didn't, this might be helpful for you. Get a couple of thermometers. I always say get 2. So whenever you throw them in your incubator, if it doesn't read the same as your incubator, you'll know, if they read the same as each other, they're probably accurate and the incubator's off. But check your thermometer or your thermostat on your incubator and make sure it's reading temperature correctly. They're notorious for being off just a little bit. Mine is off. Mine is, here, let me look real quick. I can't remember what temperature I set it at, but let's see real quick. It's at mine right now with the new thermostat I just got. I have to set it at 98.2 to get a 99.9 or 99.1% or 99.1 degree temperature in the incubator. So it's off by quite a bit. If I've set it at 99, I'm cooking the eggs basically. So check that and see. That would be the first thing to check. Don says, Bianca, what's the temperature of the water if it's not room temperature but cold? Never had that issue, honestly. I've never warmed the water up. I always get just kind of, I think it's cool tap water out of the tap and put it in there, and I've never had a problem. But it could be, especially if they're running out of water and they're super thirsty when you put the water in it and they just rush to it to drink. If it's really cold, then yeah, that could definitely cause the issue too. Bianca says, okay, so maybe it's too cold. It's just been heaps up near 3 a day. Okay, I'll monitor the temp and go from there. Thanks, Chris. Check that first. If that's not the case, then there's other things you can look at, but that's most of the time that's going to be it. If they can't get access to the water, they're not getting wet, then it's probably your brooder temperature is maybe a little bit chilly. I would check and see. Don says, have a batch going into lockdown tomorrow. Well, good luck with your hatch. I hope it goes well. Monty says, when you start incubating, what do you do with the other eggs you're collecting? Oh, so you mean like I've got eggs in the incubator and I'm still getting eggs out of the hutch? Well, I eat those. They're my eggs. That's what I do. I eat. If I'm not collecting them to incubate, I'm collecting them for eating. That's it. Verna says, dragging a leg, what size is the wire on the bottom of the cage? You could ask that question. That could be an issue. So that's not a bad idea. What size is your wire? What size wire are you using? That might help out. Troubleshoot that problem a little bit. Scrap 5000 says, what's up, everybody? Greetings from New York City. Smash the like button. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, we got 16 likes in here. 48 people, 16 likes. It could be worse. Get a drink real quick. Bianca says, Don, yeah, okay, I'll try the warmer water and see how it goes for the next. Just annoying starting with 24 and the number drops to 16 in a couple of days. Thanks for the help. Well, you're absolutely welcome. I'm saying that on Don's behalf too, because I'm sure that Don is more than happy to help out or wouldn't have provided the answer. So there's a couple of things you can try out there. We'll see. Porcupine Acre says, no, the leg was fine. No injury was visible. I don't know. right offhand. I wish I had better advice for you. Hopefully it's just the two birds, and you don't have any more issues. Let me see something here real quick. See if I can find something just to. Um, yeah, some other people are saying they may sprain their legs, and I don't. There's no good advice on a quick search, so I don't have a good answer for you, unfortunately. Um, Brandon at Whiskey Tango Farms is saying to Ben Carlos, if you purchase those eggs, I would reach out to the seller and see if they could help you out. That's a thought too. And Ben says they're from my birds. Okay. I mean, it could be that they just weren't fertile yet, too. I mean, sometimes it takes, if you collected the very first eggs that they laid, tried to incubate them, they may not be fertile. It takes a little while for them to start, laying fertile eggs. Usually I give them about a week or two after they start laying and then consider them fertile at that point. Yeah, Brandon's asking if they had any kind of development in them at all. Porcupine Acres says they both acted like drunk. Yeah, that sounds like a neurological issue of some kind. I mean, it could be like an infection. Infections can cause that as well, but you would think you would see signs of an infection. So that sounds like a neurological, like a head injury or something like that would cause those kinds of issues, make them act like that. Yeah, it said, how long do you keep the incubator running after hatching at 18 days? When should I stop trying? Yeah, I'll give it usually you're going to see your biggest part of your hatch on day 17, 18, and then you're going to have a few stragglers right after that. So I'll usually give it till about day 22-ish, 23, somewhere right around in there. And then once I don't have anything hatched for a full 24 to 48 hours, then I go ahead and call the hatch and throw them all, the eggs that haven't hatched away. Ben says 5-1, I think, can't tell well for a roux. Yeah, you can check your fertility on your eggs too. I mean, just crack them open, dump them out, and there's a little white dot on the yolk of the egg. Look for a little faint bullseye ring right around that. And if there's a bullseye ring around that white dot on the yolk, it's a fertile egg. So you can check like 10 of them and kind of see what your fertility rate is. Yeah, it says I've tried to dry hatch for the first time. Well, how did it go? I can dry hatch here usually in the summertime because the humidity is high enough. I don't have to worry about it too much. But in the wintertime or fall or whatever, I have to add water because it just is too dry. Brandon's saying you can go until 20 days in some cases. You might have a few hatch out. I personally don't recommend going beyond that, though. You might develop deformities. You might. Porcupine says, yeah, I don't, I mean, I'll go to like day 22 sometimes. And occasionally I get a bird that hatches out. A lot of times those late hatches, though, like I said earlier, they're pretty weak whenever they're hatching out late like that. And they'll develop like leg problems, splayed legs or something like that. Not always, but a lot of times I call those birds out anyway. So, Brandon's advice is not bad, but if you want to go a little bit longer than that, it's okay. You can. Just be prepared that if you be prepared to be to have to call some tiny little baby birds. That's not the easiest thing to do. But if they come out with like splayed legs or something like that, that's very difficult to treat. And, I usually will call those birds within a day or two if they're not showing considerable improvement. One Shells Project says, what's up, y'all? Or actually says, what's up, all? Hopefully you're doing well. Thank you for joining us. Just doing a live broadcast. That's what's up with me. Bianca says, yes, Chris, I did also lose 2 that way in the last batch from not putting marbles in the water to stop them from getting wet. So I learned that lesson too. Oh, and for the fox issue, had that too. Yep. It's not uncommon. Everything wants to eat a quail. Dawn says, I have 1 new batch, stepped on the water and soaked, picked it up and held it under the heat lamp in my hand until it was dry. I could feel how hot it with my hand, and it lived. I could feel how hot with my hand and it lived. Yeah, you could definitely save them from that. You're right. The problem is if you don't know that's happening, usually what happens to me is I'm too late. By the time I find out they've gotten in the water, they're already. But it's possible to definitely rescue them if you catch them early enough. Vase says, Porcupine Acres, something startled them and they hit their head. Sounds like brain injury. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards too. It's not a guarantee. It's not all that common that they really, especially unless you have for the roof of your hutch. Is it wire or is it like hardwood or something like that? If it's a hardwood, then yeah, definitely that's going to be much more likely. If it's wire, that gives a little bit. It's a little bit more cushiony. It's unlikely that they're going to do a lot of head injuries like that. But Verna's on the right track with that because, that is what quail do whenever they get startled. They flush. They just jump up. And, they could definitely have hit their head and had a head injury of some kind. What you described, walking around acting like they're drunk, that sounds like a head injury to me, like neurological issue. Jacob says you could use a pair of poultry shears to dispatch. You could, for sure. That would work pretty well. Ben says temp was 99.5. We'll check. Okay, good. Yeah, see if that helps. You may be on the right track with. I think you were the one that said maybe humidity issue too low or something like that. But yeah, it's always the first thing is to check your temperature. That's 90% of the time. That's the issue if you have a bad hatch. Hey, thanks for coming back, Curtis. Good to see you again. Porcupine Acre says 1/2-inch hardware cloth. Yeah, that should be okay. If you can do like 1 inch by 1/2 inch coated wire, that's going to be better. But 1/2-inch hardware cloth should be fine. Joy says, my incubator was crazy this time. The room it's in this time was cold at night, hot in the afternoon and evening. I have a Govee in there. I was just constantly going in and still got 30 out of 52. So that's not bad. Said the room it was in this time was cold at night, hot in the afternoon and evening. I have a Govee in there. I was constantly going in and out and still got 32 out of 50. Okay, yeah, that's not a bad hatch rate at all. But yeah, it always makes you nervous whenever you get big fluctuations in temperature in the room you're incubating in. Monty says, I didn't know when to start incubating it. I don't know what that was in reference to. We were talking about maybe having to wait a week or two after they first start laying in order to make sure they're fertile eggs before you start incubating. But either way, hopefully you get a better hatch rate on the next one. Yeah, Verna's suggesting a shorter height or put a net at 10 inches so you don't have that problem again. Yeah, you could definitely do that. There is kind of a common that, you don't make your quail hutches over, what is it, over 8 inches high or 10 inches high or 12 inches high. I don't know what it is exactly, but I don't know. I've never really had too much of a problem, and I think mine are 24 inches tall or, something. I don't know. And I've never had really any problem. I've had birds flush all the time, but I have wire top too, which is kind of gives a little when they hit them. It's not like hitting a solid piece of wood. So if they flush, then, that might help a little bit with that. Bob says first 3 days in the brooder, pulverize the feed. Now try regular crumbles too, not too interested in it. So, okay. So you're saying for the first 3 days in the brooder, you pulverize their feed, and now you're giving them just regular crumbles, and they're not too interested in it. I don't ever crumble. I don't ever grind the feed up. I give them just straight game bird starter crumble right out of the. It just from the day they're hatched. When they go in the brooder, that's what they get. I never have any problems. So if they get hungry enough, they'll eat it. Don't worry about that. Just make sure the food's available to them. They're not going to just starve themselves to death and not eat. So I wouldn't worry about it. Hi, the bread aisle says, good evening. I have this blonde quail that was supposed to be an order of Rosetta quail. So you had an order of Rosetta quail, and one of them was yellow. Is going to be white when it gets older, probably. So yeah, that happens. I've got jumbo pharaohs, and I get white birds out of the hatches occasionally. I got 2 or 3 out of this one, and they're all jumbo pharaohs. It's just a genetic. You get all these colors, these different colors and different kinds of. They're all genetic. What do you call that? Mutation. There we go. a genetic mutation of some kind that causes that. And then people do their best to isolate that so that they can produce that same color, like white or rosetta or whatever. So, you know, they have other genes. I mean, every once in a while, you're going to get a different color bird for some reason or another. It's just going to happen. It's not anything to necessarily worry about. Joyce says second incubator with 120 egg goes into lockdown tomorrow, but has had a more stable temp in the different room. So is that, oh, that's a follow-up to what you were saying. So the second incubator has 120 eggs in it. It goes into lockdown tomorrow, but that room is a more stable temperatures. Well, maybe you'll get an even better hatch rate. It sounds like you got a pretty decent one out of the first one, though. Hi, and the bread owl says, is it a Rosetta or maybe some other quail? Well, I mean, it's still it's all, you know, Rosetta, the difference is just basically the color. I mean, there are slight differences in those than there are others because that gene mutation also affects other things, but it's just, like I said, it's just a gene mutation in the color is all it is. So yeah, I mean, they're the same birds. It's just a different color. Now you can continue to breed that bird, or you could just call it out of your flock because you don't want to pass that gene on and get more of those colors, you know, as you go. It's up to you how you want to handle that one. Joshua says, hey, how many quail eggs do you get a day? I'm getting right now about 6, I think, 6 or 7. I've only got about 10 birds in there. Right now, I'm pretty low on my bird count because I've been hatching out for Curtis Snow that's in here. And he wanted to buy a bunch of quail, and I just didn't have enough to provide them all at once. So we're doing it in several batches. But I'll pick back up. Right now, I'm getting 5 or 6 eggs a day. That's enough. I mean, it keeps me plenty of eggs to eat, and whenever I want to save up to hatch, I can throw about 40 or 50 in the incubator at one time. Yeah, it says my dry hatch adventures is a fail so far. 3 of 20, 3 very healthy birds though. Well, it may be just too dry. You hear people talk about dry hatching all the time, but what they don't tell you is where they're located. Like I said, here in the summertime, we've got 75, 80% humidity almost all the time. So a dry hatch is fine. I can do that. But if I lived in the desert where it was, 30, 40% humidity, dry hatch is not going to work. So it's going to depend a lot on your environment and all those kinds of things that go into that. So you just kind of have to look at, it sounds like, and you said add water at lockdown. Yeah, that's what I do even when I'm doing a dry hatch. But, it's and humidity is not as important, but it is important, especially if you've got really low humidity. That could definitely be a bigger issue if you've got really low humidity in your environment. Verna says you more than likely had a temp problem. I usually don't add water until lockdown and get a 70% hatch rate. We don't know where he's at, though. That's the other thing, Verna. Like I said, what's your environment like there? Where are you located? What's your ambient, just the regular humidity in the environment you're located in? Practical Junk says, what do you line the walls of your brooders with? I was about to cut down some stainless steel and make panels to cover the inside walls. Could it reflect too much heat? Good question. No, my brooder is, I've got 2 brooders right now. One, I'm using this little plastic tote behind me right now because I've got chickens coming next week, and I'm going to be using the big brooder out in the shed for the chickens. But this is just a plastic tote. I don't line the walls with anything. I mean, it's just a plastic tote. And the one in the shed is a wooden box, basically, with screen on the top and wire on the bottom. Cover the wire on the bottom for the first couple of days, the first week, with blue paper towels, blue shop towels. And but there's nothing else lining the sides. I don't know. It's a good thought on the metal. It may reflect too much heat. I don't know if I'd do it or not. Whoa, I scrolled too far. It says, well, the eggs were from my own birds, 2nd generation. I guess it is somewhat a success, and it could be worse for sure. Porcupine Acre says ceiling's 1/2 inch hardware. So yeah, it's sorry, getting distracted by some of the other comments in here. 1/2 inch hardware cloth on the top. I mean, fine. That shouldn't be too many issues with that. Hopefully it's just a one-off. It's nothing to worry about with other issues. Unfortunately, if they get a serious enough head injury, if that was the case, I don't know there's much you can do for them. You can try to isolate them from the other birds, put them in a calm, quiet place, and let them try to recover from that. But I don't know there's much else you can do. And Verna's asking yet if you checked your fertility on your eggs, and he says no. Just drop the eggs after collecting for 4 days. So I mean that could be the issue. You might check them. See, I don't know how long they were laying before you started collecting eggs. 5-to-1 ratio on your hens to rooster. That's a good ratio. You should be getting good fertility out of them. Could be a fertility issue. I'm kind of leaning towards more than likely it's not, but you never know. Joshua says, hey, I like your videos. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for watching them, by the way. Witch Doctor's here, says, hey, tribe. Good to see you. And Psycho Ward there, too. I knew you'd be in here, too. Good to see you guys. Look, hopefully you guys are going to QuailCon again this year. It'd be nice to catch up. Where they at? Where are we at here? Whoa. Joshua Davis says, hey, I like your videos. Did you post that multiple times? You did. Didn't you? Already responded to it? Yeah, you got to give me time. I can't. I'm working my way through the comments. It takes me a while to get home. All right, let's see. There we go. Porcupine Acre says, how often do you rotate your stock when it comes to quail to get a fresh bloodline? Once every year or so. I try to bring in probably about every 2 years, honestly. I bring in some new blood. I don't worry about it too much other than that. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but I try to bring some in, like I said, once about every 2 years, maybe 3. It just depends whenever I get availability to do it. Bob says, do you still spray your eggs with water solution and why? Yes, I do, actually. And you don't have to use Listerine. There's other, you can use hydrogen peroxide water mixture, even a rubbing alcohol with water, mixed. Those things work too. Basically, it's to kill bacteria, to keep down any issues with bacterial, bacteria issues in the incubator. That's what it's for. Now, you don't spray them once they go into the incubator. It's all done before they ever get in the incubator. And I found too, you want to, spray. I spray them down as I collect them. I don't like to spray them down. Like I put them in the egg turner. Don't spray them after you do that because that stuff dries and the eggs can stick to the egg turner and it's hard to get them out without breaking them. So whenever you go into lockdown, you got these eggs stuck to the turner and you can't get them out. But yeah, that's why I spray them down. And it does help with your hatch rates a little bit. Scrap 5000 says, yeah, okay. Verna's saying to Porcupine Acres, all you have to do is put a new male in the cage. And that's true. Yeah, if you want to bring in new blood, all you got to do is replace your roosters, basically, and you got new blood. All right, where are we at? Scrap 5000 says, been a good eating week. Processed 7 quail, 8 chuckers, and 2 rabbits. Been so busy with work that I had let them get fairly old, so none of them were tender. Word of caution to y'all, LOL. Yeah, well, that's true too, but also you want to make sure that you let the meat rest. If you it doesn't matter how, what age you process at, but if you process anything, rabbit, chicken, quail, any of that kind of stuff, and you don't cook it like immediately or let it rest until rigor mortis has left the meat, it's going to be tough. You need to let it rest for, rabbits, usually it takes a couple of days, 2 or 3. Quail, usually 24 to 48 hours at the most. Chickens, I usually find about, 2 or 3 days, kind of like rabbits. So anyway, let them rest till rigor mortis leaves, until they're not stiff anymore, and then they're going to be much better to eat. Joshua says, hey, I like your videos and the rabbit videos. Well, thank you, Joshua. I appreciate that. You've told me that a couple times, but I still appreciate it. Porcupine Acres says, I have 5 roosters and 19 hens. That's a pretty good ratio. You should be fine. But you can double check your fertility. That may be the issue. How are we doing? All right. We got about 20 minutes left, so we're doing good on time. Mermix says, hello, guys. Well, hello to you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate that. Hi in the Blood Dial says, thank you for the time to explain my question. No other questions tonight. I'll still be watching because I find you and your channel helpful and entertaining. God bless. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And if you think of something else you want to talk about, bring it up. We'll talk about it if you want to. Ben says, what incubator do people like or use? I have a Brisnia Mini 2 Advanced and recently purchased the Maxi 24 Advanced, waiting the quail dry. I don't have a good incubator recommendation because I'm still using my little giant styrofoam incubator I bought. It's old, but it works. So I still use it. I haven't had to buy a new one yet. If I ever get to a point where I'm buying a new one, I'll have to look into it a little bit, but I don't know. We'll let other people make their recommendations to you. One thing I will say about Little Giant is that if something's wrong with the incubator, they have fantastic customer service. It's Miller Manufacturing is who makes Little Giant incubators. And if you call them up and like my thermostat's, gone out, I've had 2 issues with my incubator. One, thermostat went out, and both times it was the thermostat. When I called them up, they didn't ask like, how old is it? How long have you owned it? Proof of purchase, none of that. They just sent me brand new parts to fix it with 2 different times. They were years apart, but still 2 different times. So really good customer service. And I also tried to help me troubleshoot what my hatch rate was. Now, I had to tell them I know how to hatch. I know what I'm doing, and kind of cut them short of that because they're asking me, like basic questions, But that's good if you're like a beginner, which most people that call with them probably are beginners at hatching. And, it's good that they have that. They can troubleshoot that with you and try to help you get a better hatch out of it. What is that? Well, you guys are talking to each other. I'll let you do that. Yed says, my humidity for my dry hatch is around 25 to 30%. Yeah, it's a little bit low. It's not terrible if you've added water during lockdown and got it up, bumped it up to, in the 60 to 70% range, probably closer to the 70% range would help. Really, you might have to add a little bit of water ahead of time too, though. 25% is pretty low humidity. Chances are it's probably not super accurate anyway, though. When you start getting that low humidity, your what's it called? The incubator itself doesn't read it very well. You really need to get relative humidity to get an accurate reading on it. But still, 25%, that's pretty low. You might want to add some water to it ahead of time. You're probably in a pretty dry climate. We'll see. Like I said, I don't know where you live, so I don't know what your climate's like there, if it's dry there or not. Don says, hubby pulled me a clump of Sheepshire roots and all, so I tossed it in with the quail cages, and every cage went crazy eating it. They even ate the roots. Interesting. I don't even know what that is right offhand. Sheepshire roots, huh? I don't know what that is. I'll have to look that up. To God be the glory says, it's most likely a rosetta genetically. A lot of people actually have rosettas and they're celadons, and that's probably where the white came into play. Okay. Yeah, it could be. You never know. I get white birds, like I said, out of my jumbo pharaohs every once in a while. Joshua says, hey, what chickens are you getting? Cornish cross. They're meat chickens. So I'll be doing some videos on that. Somebody had asked for like start to finish meat chickens. I'll probably do a whole video on that. It'll be a while before it comes out because, I don't get the chickens till next week. And then we got 8 weeks roughly before they go into processing, but I'll try to keep track of it and do a video where I, from the very beginning all the way to processing day. Carrie says, is it okay to keep hatched chickens in the incubator until they all hatch, or hatch chicks in the incubator until they all hatch? I had almost shrink wrapped after getting others out. Well, it depends. You can leave theoretically, yeah, they can go up to like 72 hours before you need to remove them from the incubator. I try to remove the big hatch that happens initially. I try to get them out in about 24 hours. I find that I have best success with that. 48 isn't too bad. I think Verna's saying the same thing. You don't want to keep them in there longer than 48 hours. But, I've let them go as long as 72 hours before, and it's pushing it. I've had a few I've lost there. So, yeah, I try to get them out 24 hours. I find that's best. You can add a little bit of water to the incubator as you open it up to get those out, and that kind of help with that a little bit. But I do find it best to get the bulk of them out within 24 hours. Scrap 5000 says, Bay's place, you want to laugh. I tried pulling the hair from a rabbit after placing it in scalding water by using the feather plucker. It worked a little, but not much. I can imagine it wouldn't really work very well. James Carter says, hey, everyone. How's it going? Well, I'm doing well. Hopefully you are too. We got Sundial Fragrances here from Houston. Good to see you. Wants to know how everybody's doing. Hopefully you're doing well. Let's see what we got here. Brandon's telling, well, Verna says that was a problem. Need to stay around 30. It very well could be the problem for sure. Brandon says, Ben Carlos, I've used the Nurture Right GQF Huvabator Genesis Farm Innovators GQF cabinet, Hatching Time cabinet. They all work great besides the Farm Innovators. Yeah, I don't know why the Farm Innovator wouldn't work all that well. I mean, it's basically the same thing as a Little Giant that I've got, and it works pretty well. I mean, I get great hatches out of it usually. Tony says, hi from Toronto. Good to see you, Tony. Yeah, I've heard of people doing that. Scrap 5000 says to Verna, I have a friend who somehow pulls the hair so he is able to cook the rabbit with the skin, like pig crackling. I just can't get it right, though. That just seems weird to me. I don't know why. It just seems odd. I've never thought, I know pigs are different, I guess, but I've never, like, mammals always skin them. I've never thought of trying to pull the hair off of them and cook them with the skin on. It just seems very strange. I don't know why. Curtis says, I'm going to try be by Saturday evening for them unless you think Monday will be better. Now, Saturday's probably fine. You know, Monday I'm working until 7 o'clock at night. So Saturday's probably fine. Just hit me up beforehand, let me know, and we'll double check. That should work. Hey, there's Silver Creek Aquatics. Good to see you. Oh my goodness, I got a lot of comments now. How are we doing on time? We got about 15 minutes left. Silver Creek Aquatics says, finally got my quail eggs in the Incubator in the Incu 200. Hopefully I'll have up to 600 by the end of the season. I need a lot of them. So, okay, you got 200 in your incubator right now. Well, good luck on your hatch. Hopefully it goes well. And there's James Carter says, oh, he's talking to Vay. I'll let you guys talk. What do you think about dry hatching quail eggs is what James Carter is asking. We just had a big, long discussion about dry hatching quail eggs. So you're in Mississippi, you said, then yeah, you should be able to do that. We just talked a lot about dry hatching quail eggs. If you're in a humid climate, like, here in the summertime, we're at like 75% humidity most of the time. Dry hatch works fine. It works great. I don't ever have a problem. I do add water at lockdown to get the humidity up just a little bit, but I can go without adding water until lockdown, no problem. But if you're in a dry climate where you've got pretty low humidity, like here in the wintertime, our humidity is pretty low. It's probably closer to like 40% or something. And it doesn't work whenever the humidity is that low. You're going to have to add some water. It's just too dry. It's... But you said you're in Mississippi, so yeah, you should probably be fine to dry hatch all the way up until, like I said, lockdown. You'll want to add a little bit of water at that point, try to bump it up to 70%-ish humidity, somewhere right around in there. Scribe 5000 says, Chris, I always place them in a brine solution for a few days, makes them juicy when you cook them, but still they were tough due to age, even when slow smoked. Well, that happens sometimes. They are pretty lean, especially if you're going to be slow smoking them. They're going to dry out quite a bit, and with no fat, they do tend to be a little bit on the tougher side. Jacob says, have you ever done a video on quail dispatch and processing? If not, would you? Still looking forward to the Cooking with Chris series. I need to do that. Yeah, I have done videos on quail dispatching and processing. You can find them on my channel. I don't know if it's how to butcher a quail, how to process a quail. What is it? Let me find it real quick. I'll post a video for you. I can find it quickly. Let's see real quick. Oh, come on. It's coming up slow. Maybe I'll try to grab it here. Well, here we go. Now there's two of them. There's one. This was one method I've used to process quail before, where it's basically just breasting them out. So that's one you can check. I just posted that in the comments. And I've got a really old video. There's one really old. That was from 2015. Man, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? Check that one out too. There you go. There's two of them you can check out that I've done. On Shelf Project says, do you leave them on ice for 24 hours or just in the refrigerator? I like to dry age my meat. I don't really care to leave it in water or ice or any of those kinds of things. I just sometimes it depends on how much refrigerator space I've got. I mean, I've got 25 meat birds coming. Whenever I process those, I don't have room in the refrigerator to put 25 meat birds. So those will be in coolers probably with ice packs in there to keep them cool. But other than that, I just tend to put them in the refrigerator. Cover them lightly with a paper towel so they're not just open to the air, and let them age that way. James Carter says, I'm still having trouble with the hatching with the Nurture Right 360, so I'm going to dry hatch with a heat lamp and dry hatching. Good luck. I don't know how well that's going to work, but hopefully it does. Joshua says, what type of chickens? Is it meat or egg chickens? Yeah, I already answered that, but I'm not sure if you asked this afterwards. So it was the Cornish cross. They're meat chickens is what I've got coming. B Tech Win Solder says, I find my rabbits do well regardless of whether they stay in a designated nest. If their mother feeds them regularly, I pick them up to see how they felt, and they were just heat emitters. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of losing track here. I find that my rabbits do well regardless of whether they stay in a dedicated nest if their mother feeds them regularly. So I'm not really sure where you're going with that exactly. Like you're moving their nest around or something maybe, but yeah, it's fine. Your rabbits are not going to abandon their babies. You probably won't ever see them feeding or rarely see them feeding. It'll look like they're just not paying any attention to them. But yeah, that's that whole handling the rabbits or moving around is going to make the mother abandon. That's not true. They do fine, like you said, no matter what. Yeah, James Carter says, I tried that, but got 8 out of 20 eggs hatched. You tried what? What did you try? Oh, wrapping the 360 with a blanket. Yeah, it could be. And then you said you found like 6 dead in the shell. Now here's what you got to be careful with that too, though, is that you don't want an airtight container. So, I mean, if you wrap it with a blanket and you're blocking the air holes, there's no ventilation. It could be suffocating. I mean, you've got to have some ventilation going. I always tell people when you get like I look over at my incubator, like you can see it. When you get your incubator, there's like if you've got a styrofoam one like me, there's 2 red plugs that go in the top that plug the holes. Take them out and throw them away because you need airflow through there. Dawn says, Chris, it was sheepshire and had the roots attached, so they ate the flowers, leaves, and roots too. It's a tiny yellow flowered weed. Good on salads. Can make poor man's lemonade with it. I'll have to check that out. I'm not familiar with that. Joshua says we had chickens and a fox got ours, but we caught the fox, so we're good. Well, good. Yeah, I had a possum get the last ones, but I think he's gone. I've set a live trap for him, and I have not seen him, heard him, caught him, nothing. I mean, he hasn't been around. And I baited it with a can of tuna fish, so you'd think that would draw him in. Frog Feeder says, hey, I tried to post on one of your videos the other day, and the comment kept getting deleted. Oh, I don't know why that would happen unless it was you weren't using profanity or putting a link in it or something like that. It won't always accept that kind of stuff, so that may be why. I don't know, honestly. Every once in a while, there's just an issue. Like there's sometimes people I try to respond to them, and I cannot get the response to post for whatever we don't know. Don't know what it is. By the way, I'm way backed up on comments. I'm sorry if I haven't responded to one of your comments lately, but not just you. I mean, everybody. I haven't responded to anything for a while. Just it's hard to find time to do it sometimes. Where we go? Yeah, Verna posted a link for me for sheepshire. I got to look that up. Oh, that's wood sorrel. That's what it looks like. Is there a difference between sheepshire and sorrel? It's called sheep's sorrel, or yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a difference between those. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. I know what sorrel is. I'm real familiar with that. I just never heard it called sheepshire, but it looks the same. I mean, it's got to be the same thing, right? Um, Oh, Frog Feeder says I was offering to use my McMurray credit to get you more Cornish. Oh, I appreciate that. I've already, but now I spent it. Yeah, that's okay. No, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. But I already got them ordered, so I don't need them. And so who's this? Sundial says hit the like button, y'all. Well, we got 38 likes. We got 40 people in here, so we've got most everybody's hit the like button, I think. But thank you, I appreciate that. Silver Creek Aquatics says we're in Texas. My wife is going to dry hatch in our Dickey's incubator to try it out. Yeah, depending on what part of Texas you're in, that probably is going to work great. Texas is a big state, so there's a lot of different places there. Sundial Fragrance says, I do dry hatch here in Texas up to lockdown. Then I add water. It worked great for me. That makes sense. It should work. Silver Creek says, okay, she's talking to Vern. I'll let you do that. But yeah, Sundial says agree. It depends on where you live. Right, it does. Frog Feeder says, I highly recommend the Cornish Cross roasters from McMurray. I bought 25, got 26, butchered 26, and ordered another 60. Yeah, they're probably great. I haven't ordered from McMurray. I ordered from a different hatchery, but yeah, that's what I get. It's Cornish Cross. I get the males, the roosters. The males tend to grow faster, and you're processing them before they ever start crowing, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I haven't tried McMurray, but I'm sure they're great. Says Silver Creek says North Central Texas, just west of Fort Worth. Yeah, that's probably going to work just fine then. You're not in the high desert area or anything, so I would imagine a dry hatch is going to work great there. Silver Creek says our outside humidity is normally compared to that of the bottom of the lake. It gets sticky hot here. Yeah, it's the same thing here. When I lived in Texas, it's kind of funny. I lived in Nacogdoches, Texas for about 8 years. And this was, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. And when I lived there, people would come out on a hot summer day and say, man, it's hot out here. I bet you wish you were back in Missouri, don't you? And I'm like, it's hotter there than it is here. They just have this idea that their weather is so much worse than everywhere else, and that Texas kind of has the idea that they're special anyway. So they're different than everywhere else. They get kind of upset when you tell them they're not really that different. But anyway, no offense to you Texans in here. I like Texas. I fit in pretty well there. It was good, but they would come out and say, man, I wish you were, it's so hot out. I bet you wish you were back in Missouri. I'd say, no, it's hotter there today than it is here. And they wouldn't believe me. I'd have to pull up the weather app and be like, look, it's 5 degrees hotter there today. They didn't think it got hot here. And then they said, well, but you guys don't have the humidity. I'm like, well, it's 80% humidity. When it gets, I know sticky hot. I get it. It's, now you get down around like Miami, Florida, that's a whole different type of humidity. And even down like around Houston and that area, that is a little bit more humid, but we get plenty of hot, humid days here too. Let's see. We got a couple people talking to each other. I'll let you do that. Kiona says day 27 and 28 on my 2 New Zealand does. One has prepped the nest box, the other nothing, hoping for the best. Every rabbit's a little bit different. I've had rabbits that like to build their nest about 3 or 4 days before they have babies. Most of them, they pay no attention to the nest box until they actually have their babies. It's like just all of a sudden, boom, they have babies, and you had no warning. Silver Creek Aquatics says, y'all ever try the darker meat chickens like the Mystic Onyx or its mother bird, the I am Samani? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but no, I haven't actually tried those. I wouldn't be against it. I just haven't tried it. Dawn says, I had to use 4 layers of fleece fabric on my 360 to stabilize the temperature. Hatch rates improved way up. Now I used a Barado, and the 360 is in storage. Well, nice. Thanks for sharing that. That may help out for sure. Scrap 5000 says, speaking of weeds, anyone make dandelion jelly, wine, or coffee? I've had dandelion jelly. My sister made some last year. And it's okay. It's not bad. It's just, it's kind of sugary, very sweet, because you're adding a lot of sugar to it. I don't know how to explain it. Kind of like honeysuckle, I guess, but it's not bad. Don says, I did not cover the vent hole. Leave the top open near the vents. Yeah, that's good practice. I would agree. Don says there are several names for sheepshire or sorrel, etc. It's all the same plant. Yeah, I'd never heard it called that, but as soon as I saw the picture, I'm like, that's wood sorrel. That's what that looks like to me. But yeah, I like sorrel. It's kind of got almost a lemony, kind of a citrusy flavor to it. It's real bright, almost bitter, but not quite. I like it. It's good. It's one of my favorite, wild edibles, what do you call that? Foraging edibles. There you go. Silver Creek Aquatic says apparently the grapes are super good for the chooks. They are, dang it, I can't remember, Mustang or Muscadine. Oh, the grapes are probably Muscadine. I think that's the name for them. I'm not real familiar with grapes. We don't really get a lot of wild grapes around here. And I don't really like grapes all that much anyway, so. Sundial says, does anyone incubate duck eggs? If yes, any tips? I have not incubated duck eggs, but I hear that you need pretty high humidity to do that. That's the only thing I can say. I don't really know much about them. Well, we got quite a few here, but I'm going to have to wrap this up. We're out of time. So if I did not get to your comment tonight, I am sorry about that. Sorry, got distracted there. If I didn't get to your comment tonight, I'm sorry about that, but it is getting late. I got to wrap this one up. So again, probably around 8 o'clock for the live broadcast, kind of for the foreseeable future until something changes. But right now, that looks like what time we're going to be doing it. I'll just post in the community section if something changes on that. And thanks for joining me tonight, guys. I appreciate that, for making the adjustment, coming in a little bit later than normal. And hopefully we'll be back next week. Don't see any reason why we won't at this point. And till then, God bless. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.